So, Dr. Brown, tell me something. When politicians get to Washington, D.C., it seems, or elected officials get to Washington, D.C., it seems that an awful lot of what they talked about back in the district isn't quite what happens up in Washington, D.C. We know that there's a lot of different pressure from colleagues and a lot of pressure from lobbyists and, quite candidly, other constituents that may not exactly believe completely what you do. What do you believe that you can bring to the table that will help resist some of that pressure?
Several things. First of all, I am not motivated by re-election. I am not going up there to get reelected, and I'm not going up there as part of my career. My career has been in medicine, but I see storm clouds on the horizon, and they're moving in quickly. If we don't do something about what is going on with our country, fiscally and otherwise, this country is going to start circling the drain, as it were. We are going to have fiscal chaos, and it's got to stop now. Now, what can I do that other people have not done? Well, they haven't done much. They talk a lot, but they really don't do anything because I think they're afraid of getting outside the lines. When they get outside the lines, they say, oh my goodness gracious, I might not get reelected.
Sure.
And I've got to get reelected. Above all cost, I've got to get reelected. I know what I told my constituents, but that's not quite number one on my hit parade. Number one on my hit parade is staying here. I want my career to continue.
They actually ingrain that into you as a office holder in Washington, D.C., that remaining reelected is your number one goal.
That's paramount. That's right.
And
And even the establishment, even your constituents and the powers that be, the RNC, et cetera, they want you to stay up there. I have already encountered that so far. Mm-hmm. They don't want anyone challenging an incumbent, even though that incumbent might not be doing an optimal job of representing his district. And I think that's what's going on here. That's exactly why I'm running. Now, what do I think I can do different that is not being done? I am motivated. I am extremely stubborn, and that's not a liability, that's an asset.
I would agree.
When you go up there and you're dealing with the kind of nonsense that goes on in Washington, you're going to be in very select company. There's not going to be many people who agree with you, and there's going to be a lot of people who are trying to convince you, hey, why don't you become one of us? Why don't you become one of the boys? And most people succumb to that pressure. I am 63 years old. I am concerned about my children and your children and the rest of our descendants and the people in this district, and they don't deserve this nonsense. They deserve a better government, they deserve a better economy, and by God, that's what we're going to get them.
It sounds to me as though you believe that things are moving very, very quickly in a bad direction, but it seems as though Congress doesn't really try to do anything in any quick direction, and they just kind of tweak around the edges. What type of bold moves do you believe that it will take to bring this country back to a more prosperous and just a better place to be?
Well, some of the issues that we are extremely concerned about and proponents of include number one, getting our budget balanced now. We've got to do that because otherwise we are frankly going to be bankrupt. Now, how is that going to happen? It's been 15 years since we balanced our budget. We've had people up there who could have done it, but they didn't do it. How is one freshman congressman from the 8th Congressional District of Missouri going to make a difference? Because he's going to speak passionately and loudly, and he's not going to shut up until we get this done. And there are other people up there who feel the same way we do, but they just need, frankly, some leadership. There's very little leadership. There is a dearth of leadership in Washington. We need people to lead, and that can be a 63-year-old freshman congressman from the 8th District of Missouri, and it will be.
Well, it sounds to me as though you have that fortitude to be able to stand up to those folks and that type of pressure. Are there any specific things that you would like to maybe see done that is a very bold move? We're just kind of going on a glide path now, and we seem to tweak things. Do you have any really bold measures you'd like to see enacted?
Well, maybe we should stop adding hundreds or thousands of pages to the tax rolls. I think the figure now stands at 70,000.
Yes.
We don't need to keep tweaking that. By changing from an income tax to a consumption tax, the so-called fair tax, we will achieve a whole variety of goals. Number one, we will get rid of the IRS. We will get rid of income taxes, payroll taxes, corporate taxes, taxes on dividends, capital gains, death taxes, estate taxes, you name it. That all goes away. The IRS goes away. Instead, we get a very simple method of taxation which rewards work and savings and investment. Our companies, previously having gone overseas because the tax rates were lower over there, they're going to come right back here because they're going to say, hey, we now have a haven in which to do business. We've always done it this way. We've gotten away from it in the last few decades. We need to get it back. But when we do that, we'll have more businesses, and therefore we'll have more jobs, and the pressure will be on wages to rise rather than fall. It will discourage illegal immigrants, by the way, because those people will not be getting this monthly prebate check. Everybody under the fair tax who are legal residents of the United States, depending upon family size, will get a certain check which will cover their taxes up to the poverty level. It's going to really be a boon to the United States economy. This is going to be a bold move. The plan has been introduced as of January 2015 into Congress, but as you know, it's going nowhere because it takes the power away from Congress. The power needs to be taken away from Congress.
And that's something I get a sense from you is that you really don't want to have the fame, the glory, the accolades. You don't want the power. You've already stated that you're not that concerned about re-election as much as doing the right job. And that's why with the fair tax or a consumption tax, no matter what you call it or how it actually winds up in the end, that's something very pivotal that I think that constituents need to know, that it takes the power, it really takes a lot of power away from elected office holders. And I think that by you stating that and recognizing that should show people that you don't want that power yourself. You want to be able to return that power back to the citizenry. And by getting rid of that tax code, that's exactly what we do, isn't it?
That's exactly what we do. You know, we're not giving lip service to making bold moves. We're making bold moves. That's a different sort of thing for Washington.
Absolutely.
But you know what? They'll like it. They've never seen it, but they'll like it. And they'll say, hey, what's the eighth saying these days? You know?
There you go.
Won't that be nice? We don't have to wait on California to lead.
There you go. A lot of times, a lot of the big states get all the recognition and the people running around out there to do things. I appreciate the fact that you'd like to do some bold moves like that. Do you have any other bold policy measures or things that you would like to see done?
A couple. You know, a lot of people nowadays, including a few elected congressmen and senators, give lip service to the idea of term limits. But you can see how far that's going. They like to talk about it when the election time rolls around, but they really don't want it because they want to stay there. We don't need them staying there. We need term limits. Just as presidents have term limits, congressmen and senators have term limits. You know, the incumbents have all kinds of privileges and inducements to help them stay in office. We need to get rid of that. And our founding fathers didn't intend for our elected representatives to go up there and have a career. They intended for us to go up there, serve our constituents, and then come back home. As I have talked to many people about, I am going to come back and every 3 or 4 months have meetings at various communities and cities around the district in the evening and say, what's on your mind? Let me tell you what's going on in Washington, the challenges we're facing, the issues we're discussing. What do you guys want discussed? How else can I represent the residents of my district if I don't know what they're thinking? And I don't mean every 2 years. You don't go every 2 years and get your marching orders for 2 years and then come back at the time of the next election. That's not the way it's supposed to work, but that's the way it works now. It should stop, and it will stop if I'm representing you.
You know, that's fantastic. We hear candidates talk about town hall meetings and oh, you can contact me. You just write into us and send me an email or give us a call or something. And you always wind up talking to a staffer of some nature or a volunteer or an intern. So you plan on having regular meetings here in the district at various locations, town hall meetings on a semi-regular basis, I assume, to just let people get a hold of you, and you're going to be out there and
staffed by me.
Outstanding.
I'm not talking my chief of staff or anybody else going. I will be there, and sometimes the questions will be uncomfortable, but after all, isn't that why I'm here? To represent you.
That's exactly right, and I think that's really great that you're going to be willing to, and you're already really doing that in the campaign trail, aren't you? You're meeting with a lot of different folks at smaller venues, larger venues, and your access is, I think, unprecedented. Anybody can contact you and talk to you in any way and get a hold of you directly in one manner or another, and you'll address them.
That's right. And that will continue when I'm in Washington, because that's the way it's supposed to work, and I realize that's the way it's supposed to work. And you know, other districts will pick up on that. They'll say, hey, look at what's going on over there in the 8th of Missouri. We'd like a congressman just like that. We'd like to be able to say, hey, we're going to see this guy in 2 or 3 months, because every 3 or 4 months he comes home, he meets with us, and we can talk to him, and he listens.
And that's probably when you're driving. I know that you have some different folks on the campaign that'll make sure they're helping you out now.
Yes.
That'll make sure
That's
that,
right.
that
They
they're
will
going to hold
hold
your
me
feet to-
accountable. That's right.
Absolutely, that's fantastic.
And so they should.
Yeah,
And so they should.
absolutely, and so they should. That's correct. And I'm thankful that you recognize that as an activist, a grassroots activist. I'm honored that you recognize that staying close to the people and allowing them to hold your feet to the fire is an important thing.
It is.
We hear recently about the Convention of States. This seems to be a big thing here. It has been in Missouri and the legislature trying to get on this Convention of States. But what I don't hear is office holders in Congress trying to come up with any constitutional amendments, or maybe even more importantly, repealing some constitutional amendments that are on the Constitution now. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that there are going to be required amendments to the Constitution to affect certain goals. Number one, as you and I have just discussed, we'd like to repeal the 16th Amendment, which is part of the IRS and allowing the federal government to exact income taxes. As part of this consumption tax or fair tax, the 16th Amendment will be repealed. We will not have an IRS. We will not be having any unusual activity on April the 15th. So I'm wholeheartedly in agreement with that. We probably are going to have a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. I mean, I'm fine with us doing it on a year-to-year basis, but that hasn't worked out very well so far. So we probably need to have our feet held to the fire by an amendment. And frankly, we may need an amendment for term limits, just like we have an amendment for the president. You know, FDR, by his behavior, inspired Americans to pass the same sort of program that George Washington espoused.
Sure.
And I think we need to do that for congressmen and senators. So I think those three need to be worked on immediately.
Outstanding. Are there any other, we talked about the 16th Amendment and maybe adding a couple of different things. Are there any other amendments that you see in the Constitution that you think maybe need to be repealed? Or
a lot of people have commented on the fact that maybe direct election of senators wasn't such a good idea, because it's just added into that whole notion of people becoming senators and staying there forever, building up an unbelievable and unassaultable war chest so that you can't really go up against them unless they retire and it becomes an open seat. It would probably be better for our legislators in the states to select who they think would best represent their state to go to Washington. It would take a lot of this money out, and if the senators were not behaving, they could be recalled very quickly by the state legislatures.
And that actually fits into the original founding fathers' thought that would help support states' rights.
Yes.
And I'm going to assume that you're a pretty good states' rights advocate.
I think we need to move power from Washington back to the states.
Absolutely.
You know, it's always going toward Washington. We need to reverse that direction right now.
Fantastic. Well, Dr. Brown, it's been a pleasure meeting you and speaking with you. And folks, my name's Ike Skelton. I'm a grassroots activist. I've been doing this for several years and met with a lot of different individuals. We've got a lot of different changes that need to be made in this country, and I believe that Dr. Hal Brown would be the best person in the 8th Congressional District to take your views and your principles and your life and your prosperity to Washington, D.C., and try to bring that back to the people. And I think that you'll be a good citizen legislator, and I appreciate it.
I hope to be given the opportunity. Thanks, Ike.
Thank you.